Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. All right, we are back with another exciting episode of Off the Comma, and this week we'll be adding to our community of storytellers with another powerful story of what it's like to be on a comma and get off a comma. And I'm going to keep my rambling short today. This week we are with Jack LaFountain, and I'm going to let him introduce himself here in just a second. And just like so many of my guests, we haven't had a chance to meet or to talk in advance. And so I'm looking forward to learning about Jack through his story today and getting to know him a little bit more. So without further ado, Jack, why don't we just jump in? Let's start with introductions. Folks know me already. Why don't you introduce yourself? Start with how would you like to be known? And then share with us anything else you'd like for folks to know about you by way of introduction.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Jack LaFountain. To describe myself, I'm pretty much a vagabond dreamer,
Mm.
which kind of why I ended up where I am on the comma. But my life has been, I think, one great long run-on sentence, in that there's been several commas and just kind of keep going from there, and which is
Mm.
fine as long as I don't until I get to the period. I don't really not necessarily looking forward to that. although
Hmm.
although yeah, so to keep running. But my life is I've followed a lot of stories, and I think a lot of the characters that I write now are reflections of where I've been, what I've done, who I am.
Okay. I love just kind of selfishly, self-referencing a little bit here. I love how you said vagabond dreamer. I definitely am looking forward to your story because I can kind of relate to that description a little bit in myself, and I've allowed myself to kind of lean more into it and tap more into it here in my later years. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Jack, share just a little bit, from introduction standpoint only, because I know we'll probably learn a lot more about you through your story. What else would you like folks to know about you? Hobbies, interests, work, anything like that that's important to you?
Uh, a lot of my hobbies, more or less, are have to do with sort of socialization. I'm a part of a group that meets every Tuesday. Uh, where we meet, they call us the Liars Table, but it's
Mm,
basically Vietnam vets. We get together, we talk, and it's sort of a way that, not so much for me, but for the others, it's a way of dealing with their PTSD and
mm.
just issues, and just knowing somebody has been through the same thing. It means a lot.
Sounds like, and I'll reflect things back throughout our conversation. So correct me anytime I misstate something or misreflect something. But it sounds like, just from my own experience with other people talking about being in groups like this and um, friend groups, friend circles, support groups, whatever, right? It's probably something that you not only get something from, but also everybody else who's in that group probably gets something from you as a result as well.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. And
Nice.
in later life, I also have taken up the a hobby with karaoke, which the first time somebody heard that I got up and sang, they said, "How drunk were you?" I said, "No, no, not at all. It's I just got talked into getting up and doing it, and I had fun with it. That's the main thing. I just do it to have fun. I can't sing, but I have fun doing it.
Well, I mean, I want to acknowledge you for doing something that you enjoy, right? And not getting too caught up in the, how well I do it, because I, like many others, tend to hold back on things that I actually enjoy doing just because I don't feel like I'm doing a good job of it. So good for you.
Yeah, I ran across a meme on Facebook, said, never be afraid of making a fool of yourself on something new, and that's kind of been me.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how that shows up in your story. Before we get to the five questions that are going to frame our conversation today, the first thing I always ask every guest, Jack, is as you think ahead to the next 35, 40 minutes or so of sharing your story with us, what intention would you have for yourself today?
Well, for myself, being a little more open. It seems strange that somebody who writes, and I like I said, a lot of my life is in my characters. Um, and that's been one of the greatest challenges about writing is being more out of myself, being more open. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I hopefully that will, we'll get to that today.
Okay. Being more open. I see your intention. My intention is to support your intention today. Obviously, by creating the space here for you to be able to tell your story and then to also be more open for yourself. But that in doing so, there will be people out there who hear your story. They see a little bit of themselves in you and your story. They feel maybe a little bit more connected, a little less alone, and in the best of cases, maybe feel a little bit more inspired and empowered to go out and do something they've been wanting to do.
Yeah, I hope so. Part of we'll get into it. We're talking about the questions, but been part of what I do is to try and get others who are interested in writing, being an author, to step out and do that, give them an opportunity to do it.
Mm. Okay, so to inspire other writers, but potentially
Sure.
then. Okay. Well, Jack, let's jump into your story. Question one is, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Well, the last time I found myself sitting on a comma, I say that because, like I said, my life's kind of been a run-on sentence. I've
Mm.
been a aircraft mechanic in the service. I've been an ordained minister. I've been a registered nurse, and now I'm a writer.
Mm.
But the last time was about 6 years ago, and it was I was kind of thrown on that comma more by outside forces than so much a personal decision, although it was also a personal decision. But I'd been a nurse for 25 years and was working in the emergency room, and had been for several years, been in the emergency room. And like a lot of nurses, I had back problems over the years.
Mm.
And one evening, my back was hurting. I thought, well, it's the same old back pain. I'll rest overnight. I'll be fine. The next day, I wasn't fine. I was
Mm.
worse, and I went to get seen about, and I got some pain medicine. I thought, okay, we're gonna be good. And by that evening, I couldn't pick my left leg up off the floor,
Mm.
and that quickly led within about a week and a half to back surgery, and they had to do a lot of cutting away a bone in my back and replacing it with um, titanium.
Wow.
And I went through the physical therapy, and I actually did go back to work in the emergency room for a while, for about 3 months. But it was 12 hours on the concrete floors. Um, I just couldn't do that anymore.
Mm.
After about 10 and a half hours, I was dragging my left leg around because
Mm.
it just couldn't do that. And I really, I gave it some thought about what am I going to do next? I can't keep doing this. I've got to do something else. And changing to work in more of an office setting um, really didn't appeal to me. It really wasn't much of a an option at all or a thought at all. Um, I had kind of turned down some opportunities to go that way. I really love being hands on and being sort of in the thick of things. I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
go to, off the floor, work in an office or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That just wasn't for me. That wasn't the kind of thing I enjoyed. Um, so I looked into, I was close enough to retirement age. So I looked into that and the difference between retiring then and waiting 3 or 4 more years to retire when I actually reach retirement age. The difference in what it was going to do for my life afterwards, as far as finances and things, just it really, there wasn't much of a difference. So I thought,
Mm-hmm.
well, okay, so now's the time I'm gonna go ahead and retire. And then I thought, well, and after I retired, I thought, well, now what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'd always been involved in writing in a way. I did a lot of writing when I was young. Uh, I wrote over the years, but nothing I ever wanted anybody to see. Like,
Mm.
yeah, I don't want anybody to read this stuff. Uh, I did happen. when I was actually a sophomore in college, and I was taking an English course, and I had the assignment to write about the most interesting place that I ever had dinner or ate. And I thought, okay, I can do this assignment. I did the assignment, and I turned it in, and I got a note from the professor saying, "See me after class."
Mm.
And I thought, this can't be good. And I went to his office afterwards, and he said, he told me, "I don't think you understood the assignment. This was supposed to be a real place that you ate." I said, "Well, I understood the assignment. This really is a real place. It's
Mm.
on the island of Okinawa, and it's a real place." And so he gave me an A on the paper anyway. But when I got it back from him, he wrote a note at the bottom, said, "Your writing sounds a lot like a fellow by the name of Gene Shepherd." And I had no idea really who Gene Shepherd was. And he told me the name of the book. The name of the book that he wrote was called "In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash." I
Mm.
thought, okay, I'm going to buy the book and take a look at it and see what it's like. Before I could do that, it was Christmas time, and I was watching a movie, The Christmas Story, on TV, and it got to the end, and it said uh, it was written by Gene Shepherd
Mm.
from the book "In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash." I found out later he happened to be a veteran, and a lot of his storytelling comes from that. And I got the idea. Well, if this English professor thinks that it sounds like that kind of writing, maybe I'll give it a try. And I did write two books while I was still working as a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
They took me about 4 years to write them, but I did get them done. And so when I retired, I thought I'm going to give this a try and see what I can do with it. And I began writing, and my writings, and I don't exactly know how somebody stumbled across it, and I got a an email from a publisher here in Alabama, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to publish some of my books and my stories. And
Okay.
I thought, well, that's great. And I got involved with them. And I think I sent them two books that they really never did finish. And maybe I shouldn't talk bad about younger people, but they just didn't have the same work ethic that I.
Mm.
And it's like they kind of worked when they wanted to on it, and like I want to see something happen with this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the editors that worked from the company, they invited me to come to Alabama. I was living in Oklahoma at the time. They invited me to come to Alabama and do a reading of one of my stories at a local coffee shop. And so I said, sure, I'll do that. And I came out and I did the reading here, and I liked it. So I liked the area. I just decided to stay and moved out here. And one of the editors from the company just pulled me aside one day and said, "Look, let's you and I form a publishing company."
Mm.
My thought was, I don't really want to do that. I don't know anything about publishing books. I mean, yeah, I write books, and she liked the books that I wrote, but I said I don't know anything about doing that. I don't know anything about editing and things like that. And so she decided to take up the editing and the bookkeeping and those kind of things. I did work on some of the advertising for it, but we published several books, and we took on some authors that nobody were kind of the same place I was. Nobody had heard of. They wanted to get a break into print, and it was like those are the people we're gonna work with. We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
give them their break into print, and then if they go wild with it and become greatly successful, well, let them go on their way, because
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of small time. If they make it in the big time, great. That's what we want. But uh, whether they do or don't, we want to give them a start. And I was grateful for having that start, and some people helped me along the way.
Mm-hmm.
My first couple of books. actually picked up on podcasts. Um, I had one podcaster. I we talked about maybe him reading a chapter from one of my books, and he told me no. I said I want to read the whole book in
Mm,
a series, of podcasts. Yeah, go ahead, read it,
okay.
and that worked well. I got and that was somebody picked up on that, and I was on some podcasts about different paranormal because a lot of what I write has to do with um, paranormal, supernatural kind of things.
Mm,
People sometimes ask me, you know, I, for example, I have a book. Actually, the first book I did after retiring is about a local small town sheriff who has a creature called Rougarou, which is a Cajun werewolf in his
mhm,
town. And so, I got started doing these books about werewolves and monsters and all of these things. Um, but my Christian background broke through there, and I actually had one person that I want you to write a book, sort of a doctrinal book, devotional book about. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And it was one of my editor, and she kept after me, write it, write it, write it. So finally, I did write it, and actually then spun off from there and began a series of Christian westerns. And I have had people say, "How do you write both things? How do you write
mm.
monsters and then you write this?" In fact, people stop at when I have book signings. People come by and they look at the covers of the books and like, "You wrote both of those?" I said, yeah, I did. And
Mhm.
I actually wrote on my blog. It's not because I'm confused. It's because I see so much of the both sides as a battle between good and evil, and you can tell it
Mm,
from whatever perspective that you happen to have at the time. And
mhm. Jack, let me jump in for a moment because I
sure,
mean you've really covered a lot of ground for us here, and I want to go back and kind of reflect a couple of things. We can clearly hear where you are in the present and what you've now accomplished. If we go back to your comma moment, like first of all, I hear, a past life of not being afraid to change directions, change careers, take on new learning and new challenges. And then, you talked about this comma moment, which at one point, we could listen to your story and say, oh, it's all about, the issue with your back and the back surgery and being forced to kind of change direction. But it almost seems like that was sort of like the triggering moment, and that the real comma moment was as you were exploring, what do I do and how do I go into kind of fully into this identity of being a writer. So and then I was kind of self-referencing there a little bit because as you were talking about the back situations, I have some of those of my own, and I was really curious where that was going to go. And but it sounds like kind of the back situation was able to get resolved, and then
yeah,
it took you in this new direction. Let me ask the second question here, and feel free to kind of go back into your story as much as you need to.
sure.
As you look back at this comma that you were sitting on, what did it create for you? It seems like you've kind of started to tell us a little bit about that, but say more. What did this
Um,
create?
One of the things initially it really created was some tension, personal tension, anyway, personal stress, maybe. The whole idea of writing, yeah, I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed doing it, but again, that idea of putting it out there for people to actually read,
Mm.
taking that jump to say, well, okay, this, what I've done is it's worth putting out there for people to read, and I'm not sure that's the case. Yeah,
What were you
but my
feeling
thinking
when
was, English college professors will always tell you you write great.
Mm. Well, let me ask you this because in every episode there ends up being a moment like this, right? Where people listening, myself and others who are listening, we can kind of nod our heads and say, yes, we assume we know what you're talking about, or that we assume we know kind of how we can relate to that. When you say putting it out there, what was that like for you? What was it about putting it out there that seemed to be a challenge?
Well, probably the greatest thing is not so much getting the book published and it's out in in public in the public domain. Not so much that that was there, although that was part of it because um, I knew people who that knew me and are going to buy the book just because they knew me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
are going to pick that up and probably get some looks at me they didn't know, some parts of me they didn't know about. But the real challenge, and a lot of authors that I've dealt with since then, face is that a lot of them tend to be very introverted and introspective. Some of them told me, I do not want to go out in the public, personally. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'll put my writing, the writing can be there. But when I started doing that, I really knew and thought that for this to work for me, I have to go out in person and basically and sell my books. I have
Mm.
to get out in the public, offer book signings, be out, in conventions, get out in person. And I wasn't good at um, meeting people for the first time.
Mm.
That was a huge stressor for me to get out and do that. Um,
So just to clarify then, and I talk to a lot of writers on this podcast too, so it's always interesting to hear everybody's unique kind of experience with the process. Or so it wasn't so much that your writing would be seen and that your writing would be out there. It was the what you would have to do in order to promote your publications. And so it was about the this personal sense of getting out there and interacting with other people. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, it is, and especially the point that kind of from my background, the whole idea was I had an aversion, I still kind of do, that you don't promote yourself. I
Mm.
didn't, promoting yourself seemed to be contrary to um, a lot of my viewpoints about how to do things. You don't, self self promoters um, just seem to have something sort of false about it. And
Mm.
you know, I absolutely didn't want to be a self promoter, but I found out very quickly that if I wanted to sell books, if I wanted to be a writer, there was a certain amount of self promotion that I would have to do. Uh,
Can I ask a drill down question just because there
sure.
might be other people out there who hold that belief as well, and people who that's not even a thing for them and they want to understand somebody who matters to them who holds that belief. What was it, so that none of us are making any assumptions or drawing any conclusions? What was it about self-promotion that was going to be a challenge for you, or what was it that you had to kind of wrestle with in order to overcome it?
Well, I'd face, I think, in a way, some similar challenges. One was becoming a man in the nursing field. I was 40 when I became a nurse, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a bit of a challenge. Had some funny moments. I happened to be at report in one hospital at the change of shift, and there were probably 20 of us sitting around the table, and 19 women and me. Uh, a transporter came up from surgery to take my patient down to surgery, and walked up to the table and said, "Who's Jack?" We all looked at him like, "You got to be kidding!"
Mm.
So a lot of that, but being in that situation, I felt like really the way to promote myself and to get along was to quietly perform.
I was gonna say what I notice, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, as I'm looking at the notes I'm writing and reflecting on what you've shared with us, seems like it's been a life of service. You've always been in these kind of deep service roles.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and my editor now says, that has sort of been my life is some kind of
Mm.
service, and that and I think that has to go back to this idea that if you want to serve people, really, you have to put them first. You can't promote yourself.
Okay. Okay. And so you're facing that because I had kind of interrupted your story. So you're
Yeah,
facing that challenge, and now the prospect of I've got to go on the road and promote my books.
yeah, that be it that has gotten much easier, and the sort of the key that I found at that is that I really do love writing, and I love books. Not just my books. I just love books. I always have been a great reader. And again, that with new authors that I talk with that are kind of stuck on that, is to tell them, look, they don't. They tell me I don't know what to say. I don't know how to engage people. I said, you like books, right? You like writing. Talk to them about writing. If
Hmm.
you talk about something you love, you're going to find you're able to talk about it with anybody. And
And
some of
it
that I
tends.
was kind of thrown into here too. I have a friend that when I first joined the American Legion here, found out that I was a writer, and now anybody that comes in the door, it's like, "Hey, Jack's a writer.
Mm,
Tell him about your books."
mm,
And or
okay.
and so I kind of got a push out there, but and it's still some of that helps, but I think that's pretty well kind of fallen by the wayside. It just from having been in that position so often, that it's easier to do now. I still don't really. I try to promote, and when I do, I try to promote the books and not me.
Mm.
I try and stay in the background as much as I can.
Well, and what I believe I'm hearing you say, and then I want to go to our third question because I think you've really set us up for it. There's different ways to do these things, right? Like what I'm hearing you describe is something that I face a lot in my life. I know others do because I talk to them as a coach and as an instructor and so forth. It's like there's this belief that in your case, right? Promoting myself kind of goes against these beliefs that I have and what is right and wrong and so forth. But what you're demonstrating is that there's ways to do the thing that are within the realm of what you want and within your values and within, other ways to accomplish what you want and not do something that you feel like you didn't want to do. And that's what I'm hearing you describe. It's kind of like with you promoting your books is like other people who are promoting starting a new business or what have you. And I hear people all the time talk about, when I started talking about why I enjoy it or why it's important to me, that gets people's attention more than my elevator pitch, so to speak. And that's what I
Right.
believe I'm hearing you say is I started talking about the process. I started talking about, my books and what I like about them, not so much about, why I have to write and why I have to sell books and so forth.
Yeah, it definitely is. One thing I have a couple of series of books, but one when this happened, I actually on a podcast as well. They wanted to talk about one of the books that I'd written, and I went on to talk about it. It was actually the first one that was published by somebody besides me, and I'd written uh, a sequel to it, and that had been out of a few months, and they asked me about that sequel, and I said, "Well, you know what? That book was terrible.
Mm.
It's not as good as the first one. I just think it's absolutely terrible. I kind of wish I hadn't done it." And they'd actually read the book, and they said, "What do you mean?" But that's the one that got all the really good reviews, and that's a good book. I said, well, sometimes I guess I don't know what it's
Well,
all about.
I hear you kind of reinforcing something that I believe I see in all kinds of creators, whether it's a cook or a writer or a musician or, an architect or whatever. It's like we don't necessarily, I could even say the same about, this podcast, perhaps, we don't necessarily feel the same way about everything that we create, and
Right.
that's okay. And when we create these things, we're not necessarily creating them for ourselves. It's kind of a win sometimes if it feels like that, but it's not always true, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. One of my books, and this amazed me, but I'd written three books in series, and I actually got emails from people that said that the main character's name was Ed. They wrote more than one. Like, we're concerned about Ed, but
Mm.
he never gets the girl. And My response almost is, he's make believe, right? He's real to me, but he's not real to
Hmm.
anybody else. Like, yeah, but we're concerned. So I actually wrote the fourth book in that series where he got a girl,
Okay. I
but
it's
it was more for people that were readers than
sure.
so much for me. Because somebody asked me later about it, and I said, hey, I watched Bonanza every Sunday when I was growing up, and any woman that happened to fall for one of the Cartwrights or them for her, she was dead.
Jack, let's go on to question three, because I feel like this is a good setup, and we'll bring it back to you now. So, question three is, as you look back at this comma that you sat on, what have you learned about yourself, or maybe even what are you learning about yourself?
I've kind of learned sort of a steadfastness about it.
Mm,
Like I said, I describe myself as a vagabond. I've moved all over the country. A lot of my nursing career, I worked as a travel nurse. I was only,
mm-hmm,
you know, at places 13 weeks at a time, been all over the country. Not that I didn't, enjoy it, and I did stay with that for 25 years, but I didn't let the writing when I started just kind of fade away. And
mm,
I decided to, I was going to stick to it and I was going to write it. I had my editor said, I've said, I want to end this series. I said, told the whole story about this fella. I want to end the series right here. And my editor said, no, you've created a whole town full of people. So now you can go on and tell their stories.
mm-hmm,
And, I kind of that's kind of a change for me because before I probably would have stuck with it and said, no, absolutely not. I'm not
mm-hmm.
doing that. I kind of would have to come up with a whole nother mindset to do that. And I don't know that I'm ready to do that kind of thing, but and staying with it has opened the door to me to different genres in writing. Since then, I've branched off. I've done some fantasy novels. I've done short story collections and several different things that probably I would not have done otherwise. I might have wrote the two or three books that were that and then called it quits.
Mm. You said steadfastness. I believe I'm also hearing kind of flexibility, adaptability, perseverance. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong or if there's more words that also come to mind.
No, definitely that's it. And a lot of that came from, again, from that travel nurse background.
Hmm.
Uh, the people I thought, how do you go from hospital to hospital? Well, hospitals are hospitals. The important thing when you go is finding out how do they do it and
Hmm.
being flexible enough to do it some other way than the way you've just been doing it for 13 weeks. Well, now you're at a new place and they do the same thing, but they do it this way. And yeah, that's kind of something I think that I've adapted to my writing is so that I can do different things uh, and do it from different perspective, different ways. Uh,
Mm.
my editor says that I just have a lot of voices in my head that need attention.
Well, it seems like a powerful thing to say, though, because you're not just acknowledging people. Here's what I believe, and correct me where I'm wrong. When people acknowledge you're traveling around and how can you do this in all these different hospitals, they're acknowledging the thing itself, and you're saying I got so familiar with all of the things that I recognize the patterns, the systems, the connections. And it's like I talk about this all the time with people in workshops, right? Like we talk about
Right,
preparation, for example, and preparing for a certain type of conversation or a certain type of event or a certain type of activity. And I'm like, you can prepare for the thing and then you can be
right,
prepared for anything, right? And
right,
those are two completely or they're two separate skill sets that complement each other, right? Preparing for the thing requires some subject knowledge, subject
right.
matter knowledge and expertise. And then the skill set of being prepared for anything is like the skills of adaptability, recognition, observation, and so forth, right? And so that's what I hear you acknowledging is like,
Yeah, that pretty much is. Like I said, a lot of my characters are a lot of me. Uh, but the whole idea of writing is a lot of comes from the background that I've had
Hmm.
in having to change things up, be flexible about doing it a certain way at a certain time, and just not letting that throw me off or make me give up.
Hmm.
Just like you said, you learn the thing, but then if you really know it, you have to adapt it to whatever situation you're in.
Hmm. It, an effective cook can cook in any kitchen and shop in any store, right?
Right.
So, okay. Jack,
Yeah.
let me ask you the fourth question, and that is, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma? What else would you add that you haven't already shared?
Um, I think as a overall, I'm probably much happier now doing this than I was at any other time. I mean, not that I
Mm,
was unhappy necessarily, but I really feel like, okay, this is what everything else led up to,
mm.
and this is what you're meant to do.
What is it about this kind of vocation now, being a writer, that is happier, or what part of it, or what makes it happier now?
A lot of it is just part of it is the work itself, just trying to come up with new ideas, new creations. Of course, they which can come from anywhere. Uh, you hear a song lyric or uh, one book I wrote, somebody showed me a picture and tell me what this picture says to you.
Mm,
And that became a book. But um, seeing things, I listened to some lectures that, authors kind of need to see things that other people don't see
mm-hmm,
in something that's obvious. And I tell that to people, authors, and I guess that's part of the fun of it is playing what if, and that's what authors do a lot. What if, and there's nobody out on the street. It's completely quiet and deserted for this time of day. Well, what if aliens came down and carried everybody off?
mm-hmm.
And hopefully that leads to a story.
Okay. I like that. I like that. And what I also hear you say, I mean, this can be true for any of us, whether we're just wool gathering, daydreaming, right? Or whether we're writing, creating, is you can drop what if into any situation and take it in
Right.
whatever direction you want to go. And I also suspect, confirm for me if this is true, that you may start with the intention of what if and you start steering it, and then it sort of takes on a life of its own.
Oh yeah, I do that. I tell my editor, my characters wake me up sometimes at night.
Mm,
Actually had this happen, and I wake up at night. It's like my character's voice said, that chapter you did today, that's all wrong. This is the way it should be. This is
mm.
what you missed out on. Uh, do it that way. And yeah, and that's one of the fun aspects of doing this now is a lot of times people think I'm sitting around doing nothing, but I'm working.
Hmm.
My editors told people they called want to talk to me, said, well, he's in New Orleans right now. Really? When did he go? I said, well, no, he's still here at home, but
Right.
he's off somewhere, and no telling where he's at.
And with intention, because it's so funny. I have to ask myself this sometimes. It's a different application, right? But it's like, isn't that true? That's the power of the mind. And I'll be having conversations sometimes with myself, sometimes with others. It's like,
Right.
where did you just go? Right? Where were
Mm-hmm.
you just now? And you're talking about really kind of like an intentional and positive side of that conversation, right?
Yeah, I just did that with the character yesterday. I was writing a scene, and the character he's involved in this. Things are happening to him, and he just gets a sudden thought like, "What about this? How does this saying affect you?"
Hmm.
And it kind of changed the course of the story, certainly from where I was wanting to go with it.
Let me ask you this next question, and I haven't done this before in this same way with other guests, but I feel like you've really shared so much with us about your experience. The fifth question is, what does getting off the comma look like for you? And I would invite you to add to that, what helped you or what enabled you to get off of that comma that you described some time ago? So, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Well, it really looks like a whole new life, and it is. And I've had a lot of help along the way, which I appreciate. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of opened up a lot of the, as you pointed out, a lot of my life was channeled into service. This is not so much. This is maybe more self-serving because
Mm,
it's maybe I feel like I get more out of it than I
mm.
give. I don't know if I do or not, but uh, sometimes I feel that way. It's like, I'm getting this, and I don't feel like I'm giving as much. Oh, sometimes I try to do that, and that was part of the idea of helping new authors was giving
Yeah.
some.
Well, it seems like you get to feel like you get more out of it for a change, but I would be willing to bet money that the truth is that you're still very much giving, just based on some of the things you shared with us. People saying, "Hey, that character feels real to me," or "Whatever happened to so and so," or "You need to finish writing about." I mean, those are all signs to me that people are very much getting things out of what you're doing, and you get to feel like you're getting more out of it yourself.
Well, I hope so. And one of the I write a couple of blogs, and one of the blogs that I write is harkens back to my days. Well, not that I gave up being a minister; I still am, but it is towards that goal. I do
Hmm.
the same thing I did teaching, preaching, all of those things. I still do that in that blog,
Hmm.
and people I know people read it and they tell me like, yeah, I like that today. That helped me. So
Okay. Jack, obviously there's so much more. As a storyteller yourself, I'm sure there's so much more you could tell us, but all podcasts have to come to an end at some point.
right.
For folks who want to learn more and they don't want the story to end, they want to check out your works, they want to see what you're up to, maybe follow you, reach out. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Tell
All right.
us, where can people find you?
They can find me directly at jacklafountain.com. Uh, oh, actually, it's Jack LaFountain. I take that back. It's jacklafountainauthor.com.
Okay,
Uh,
great.
I had to add the author in there, but and also at houseofhonorbooks.com. All my books are on there. That's not particularly me. That's me working in partnership with other people.
Hmm.
But mine are on jacklafountain.com, and my blogs are on there. No Jack and the Wandering Crusader uh, are on there as
Okay.
well.
All right, great. We'll put those links in the show notes.
Right.
And then the last thing before we wrap up here is a section that we do in every episode that I call acknowledgments. Obviously, you being here today is evidence of what we do in this podcast. It's giving a voice to people's stories, it's lifting up people's experiences, and your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you an opportunity to do the same for folks who matter to you. And so, like I said, I call it acknowledgments, and it's your opportunity to give a voice to, or boost, or lift up others who matter to you. That could be causes, organizations, it could be other creators, or just important people in your life. So, who would you like to acknowledge today? And I'll be sure to include them in the show notes.
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge American Legion Post 237, where I belong. Uh, it is a great group of people. American Legion does a lot of great things. Uh, their boys state and girls state programs help prepare high school students for challenges as an adult. Of course, American Legion baseball has been. I'm a big baseball fan, so I love American Legion baseball and that too. Um, but the greatest thing mentioned earlier about the Liars Table, we uh, meet on Tuesday mornings and get together and tell stories, which I love. Actually, I'm trying to get them to open up and tell me more stories,
Mm,
so that I can put that. I'm not hiding it, but I tell them, you tell me stories, I'm going to put it in a book,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
we'll put these stories out there. That's some encouragement, I think, to them. But that's like I said, that's a big part. We've got a group of men that Tuesday mornings. It's like a doctor's appointment almost. They're there every Tuesday morning, and they tell people, uh, doctors or wherever they go, it's I'd be glad to do whatever you want or be where you want, just as long as it's not on Tuesday.
Okay.
So
And this is all at the American Legion Post, right?
that's what the American Legion Post. We do some,
Nice.
and I like to
Okay.
I do karaoke there too. I have fun with that.
Okay.
But and then also sort of connected with the American Legion Post is a group called the 40 and 8, which is a honorary veterans organization. It's called the 40 and 8 because during World War One, which where this group came from, uh, our veteran, our infantrymen, especially, were shipped to the front from Paris, wherever they landed, in boxcars,
Mm,
and all the cars in France were stamped with a stamp that said it would hold 40 men or 8 horses,
mm.
and that the name they derived the name from there. They do charitable work, nurses training, child welfare, several different things that they do as service to the community.
Yeah. Okay. And then I believe before we started recording, you had also mentioned House of Honor books, I believe.
Yes, yeah, House of Honor books. I'm a partner now in that. Started several years ago, but and again, my part is try to encourage people to take a chance, step out there, put your work out there, and we make it easier for people to get published for the first time, and we do it on a traditional basis that pay no money up front.
Hmm.
You send us your manuscript, we go, we work over it with you, and you make royalties. And so you sell your book, you make royalties. You don't sell your book, you don't make royalties. So it kind of again forces those people to get out there and
Hmm. Okay.
with their books. And uh, so I don't know how much longer I'll be a part of that. I'm getting up there in years, but hopefully it will
Okay.
keep going. We plan on it keep going. So.
Yeah.
But it's been fun to work with that and work with the people that we do. I get together with the other authors from time to time. We're like last year in Nashville, we all got together and had a huge book selling. We're going to do the same thing at a book signing this May coming up,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it's fun to get together and fellowship with them.
All right, great. Well, I know you and I will talk more after we're done recording for a few minutes, but meanwhile, I just want to thank you for joining our community of storytellers and coming and sharing your experience with us and letting us hear what getting off the comma is like for you. So thank you again.
Well, thanks. I had a great time.
Awesome. Have a great week ahead.
All right, you too.
What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.